So we're talking about this use case or case study internally within our project managers. And one of them jumps up and is like, well, actually, I do have a change order from a subcontractor. Can you give me that data? I'm like,
yeah.
No, you have to fly the drone every week.
Yep.
First.
Welcome to the Reality Capture Network, where we focus on technology-driven innovation, education, and community. The Reality Capture Network, bringing the future to you. On this episode of the RCN podcast, Director of Innovation at the Haskell Company, Hamza Shinbari.
I grew up in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and none of my family were really into construction or doing anything around it. But there was a construction project that was going right next to our house. So I just watched all of that and I was fascinated by it. Wanted to go into the architecture side. And I got just a flavor of that to realize quickly that was not for me. That's when I pivoted and I went to architectural engineering, really just focused on looking at new technologies, Horizon 3, what's coming, 10 years from now, and seeing how we can implement some of these technologies today, always staying ahead of the game and seeing what's coming down the pipeline. Not everything is either like black or white, right? It's like This works and this doesn't. It's really what's the use case, what's the problem statement. It's the infinite game, right? Not something that you're going to make the win today. How do we win the next generation that are coming up?
Yep.
Here's all the technology, here's how all the use cases and the value. A lot of people are afraid of failure, but don't be. You learn from it and you become better anyway, so don't be afraid to fail.
Today on Reality Capture Network, we have Hamza joining us from the Haskell Companies. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt.
Yeah, it's, I love finding other people who are excited about innovation and change and technology, and I believe you're one of those people. So I am excited to dig in here a little bit with you about your work and your position, but what we normally like to do when we start these off is first kind of let our listeners learn about the individual. And I like going all the way back because I believe that we can learn from people's story in their journey of like how they grew up. What was life like? Did you work? Was your family in construction? Were they innovators? What led you to getting into this industry? And one of the reasons I like talking about some of those stories and things is that we want to try to inspire other people to get into our industry. So hearing the stories of how we've gotten where we are kind of can give us some clues into how can we get other people into it. So let's take us back a little bit, however detailed you want to be. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? And what was your kind of journey in, growing up into school and what you wanted to do with work?
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here. And again, I always excited to meet other, passionate and enthusiastic people about innovation and technology in the construction industry. So thanks for kind of connecting at AU. A little bit about me. My name is Hamza Shinbari. Oh man, where do you want to go back to?
I want to go back to home life. We don't have to go super detailed there, but like, what did you grow up around?
Right. So I was born in Boston. I don't remember many of the days that I spent in Boston. I was just an infant. But then we went back. So because I was born to Saudi parents, so I went, and that's where I grew up. Most of my childhood and really early adulthood is all in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And one of the early kind of introduction to construction, so to say, is like none of my family were really into construction or doing anything around it. But there was a construction project that was going right next to our house. And, just as the enthusiastic or kind of curious 9, 10-year-old me, just constantly peeking out the window for like hours at a time, just watching the people go in and out and what they're doing. And all right, so I see like, they're digging, now they're doing the foundation, and they had some issues because that specific area that they were building on was very rocky. So they had to get really creative because even like those huge excavators and even like jackhammers and everything were not breaking those rocks. So they had to get creative. And they wanted to use, I remember kind of like just peeking on some of the conversations as they were like looking to use dynamite.
Oh, yeah.
And I think somebody told them, no, you're not supposed to. You're in a residential neighborhood and stuff like that. So I just watched all of that and I was fascinated by it. I mean, that's that's really, really way back when. And I don't even remember like tying those back into why I chose construction, right? It's just something that subliminally lived in my subconscious, I guess, until I got to undergrad.
Okay.
And the kind of the artistic part of me, because I draw and I kind of do some other, just kind of creative aspects, wanted to go into the architecture side.
Yeah.
And I got just a flavor of that to realize quickly that was not for me. Nothing against them. They're really awesome people. It's just like that paradigm of, just it just wasn't my thing, right? I like the artistic aspect of it, but that wasn't like a full-time job.
Yeah.
So that's when I kind of pivoted and I went to architectural engineering is what they call it, which is a kind of something that was really spun out of Penn State. That was started the architectural engineering program, which is kind of like a little bit of both. So there's some architecture aspect, but also there's the project management and the engineering aspect of it all mushed into one curriculum. And it was a really interesting program. I graduated from that, and that was, again, still back in Saudi. Worked for a couple of years as kind of like a project manager for an owner, kind of like an owner's rep for a large bank that was doing a lot of different projects in the country, a lot of travel, a lot of kind of keeping up with all the different GCs and their subs and what they're doing and the schedule and the budget. So there was a good kind of amount of exposure to how things are being done. And this was all kind of like pre-technology. So we were using like AutoCAD maybe back then. That was like early 2000s, like 2005, 2006. And that's when I decided to kind of like, maybe let's pursue my master's degree. And that's when I got back to the States to University of Florida in Gainesville, got my master's degree there. And that was kind of my first intro, 2008, 2009, to BIM, right? To Revit. And it was super fascinating, right? And it was still something new that not a lot of people knew how to, handle the software. So there was a lot of demand in the industry for that. So I was immediately kind of like completing my master's and doing my PhD as well, kind of like back to back. I was able to find like a job for a local GC there that was a small GC, but because they do a lot of work with UF, UF had that mandate that any project, no matter the size or, priority, need to have a BIM model.
So that requirement was back in like 2009-ish, 10-ish? Or?
I think, it started kind of 2010, 11.
Okay.
I would say. So all of these kind of like smaller GCs started looking for interns, right?
They weren't ready.
Right. There's like, I don't even know what Revit is. So let me grab some of those new students that are maybe still in the program, not even like graduates, and, pay them, minimum wage. I don't care.
Yeah.
To me, it was more about the exposure and getting the actual use cases and that experience out of it. That's really what drove it home for me. And I did that for a while with a small GC in Gainesville called BBI, Construction Management, until I kind of graduated from my PhD in 2016. And that's when I joined Haskell.
Awesome.
Again, it was fantastic kind of joining a much larger GC at a much larger scale. And joined their VDC group, of course, because I have that, background and some experience. And I showed because even during UF days, I taught Revit and in graduate level classes. It's like how to use it and how to manipulate and how to play with it. So that really got me a leg up on the industry. And that's when I joined Haskell. I was super excited to join the company, a big company that was doing like really large projects. And looking at the models, it was like night and day comparison, right? Between what I was using, what I was teaching with, and what we were kind of like really trying to push and into the field and get the people over there to start building. That lasted for a couple of years, maybe 3 years. And then I worked my way up through the innovation kind of leg into Haskell. And that's when they stood up in 2018, when they stood up DisrupTech. And DisrupTech is kind of like a wholly separate LLC, still wholly owned and operated by Haskell, but really just focused on looking at new technologies, Horizon 3, what's coming, 10 years from now, and being on the forefront of that and evaluating and checking and seeing how we can implement some of these technologies today, but also always staying ahead of the game and seeing what's coming down the pipeline.
That's awesome. So it's been a journey for you since joining and watching, so you've been there 6 to 8 years now, or somewhere around there, and watching that growth. I mean, the technologies have been coming out, with updates yearly. There's new hardware, there's new software. How do we meld all this into something that fits into our actual projects? How do we, get project teams to want to utilize the data? It is awesome to hear that you guys actually you've gone to the extents as a company to have a specific company or division that is focused on pushing those boundaries. I was just talking to somebody about innovation, and I was like, you can't think of failure as failure if it's a learning process. But in our industry, what we don't want to do is fail on the job. Creating a division or a process to how do we make it a culture that is okay to fail in a controlled circumstance, but let us do that enough to prove out what works and what doesn't. I think that's one of the problems I still see in our industry a lot, is that companies are wanting to improve so much. They see a technology and they get excited and they buy it and they run out and put it on a job without fully understanding, how do we do this properly? How do we control this properly? What level of accuracy does this type of hardware give us? And we see a lot of history in construction jobs over the last 10 years where people said, "Oh, we tried drones, we tried laser scanning, it didn't work." When really, I think it's that a lot of early adopters didn't have enough, process to actually develop good, solid workflows before implementation. So that seems like that's kind of your guys' focus with this stand-up. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's exactly what we do. When we see a new technology, first step is like, let's sit down on a demo, let's evaluate, let's see what the value that it brings, right? And then kind of map it out against potential competitors that we are aware of. But even like what we love more than just kind of evaluating these tech and testing them on controlled environment is having field teams, or even like, because Haskell is a design belt, so we have both kind of sides of the contract. Even designers in the office or people in the field come to us and saying, "Hey, I'm really doing this mundane task over and over again. Is there anything that can help speed it up or make it more efficient in any way, shape, or form?" And that's when we're like, all right, great. Because to me, step one is identifying the problem clearly, right? Because you can have all these toys and all these technologies, and if they're not solving a specific use case and a specific problem statement, it really is not going to go far.
Yeah.
So you might implement it in one project and it might work to an extent, but it's not going to scale. It's not going to get that much adoption and buy-in. So I get super excited when we hear that somebody is, coming to us about a specific problem statement. I usually have 5 or 6 different solutions ready, and like, here you go. But then the next step of this is, all right, let's sit down and as you said, Matt, is like, let's do an implementation plan. What are we trying to test? How we're testing it? How we're collecting the data? What data points it's touching? Which other tech stack it's talking to? And then lastly, it's very important. It's like, what does success look like, right? Quantitative, qualitative. How do we measure it? And then run through that, give everybody, their roles, their responsibilities, and keep supporting it for as long as we possibly can. And then collect that data, collect the feedback from the users, put on a report, and, saying, this is what we did, this is how we did it, this is where it worked, this is where it didn't, limitations, and all the different stuff. And all of that really helps us kind of pick the best technology out there that works well with our specific tech stack and our specific use cases and people, and kind of get into as many projects as we possibly can. Like scaling, that's a completely other different ball game, really.
Yeah. So I'm curious to hear, I heard you on another discussion talking about how, you guys have kind of taken the approach of, you don't want to force a technology or a process, but you want to have it available for someone to use. What's some of the thought or mindset behind the company deciding, like, if you, as your division, the innovation process, determine this is a technology that would help us solve XYZ, do you not at that point try to make it be a company-wide thing? You let like different projects decide if they use it or not, or what does that process look like?
Yeah, that's exactly what when we report on it and we kind of bring it to operations and say, this is the best, next thing, right? This is the bee's knees. This is something that really works. We still can't force it, even though I would love to go out there and say everybody's using X, Y, and Z, and these specific solutions. You can't make it work that way. You don't get the buy-in. You just have to continue with the marketing efforts internally, saying, here's this project, and how they used it and what worked for them. Here's the savings. Showcase it. Keep bringing that up and keep getting people to share their stories about when they use this tool, that's how it worked for them, and have it be available for everybody else. It's like, here it is. It's right here. Yeah. It's paid for. You can have it today if you want to, but I'm not going to come and shove it down your throat, because we've proven time and time again that it really doesn't work.
Yeah. What's some of your initial personal response to divisions or other companies have these struggles too of, there are the people that like doing things the old way, and even if the technology is proven, or even if it's better, it's safer, it's faster, it's cheaper, when you have people that are just hesitant to change, what do you share in a meeting like that?
I can't share anything with them. That's something that I've learned also kind of 2 years within this job is you can spend so much time and effort trying to convince someone using something that they're not interested in, and it will not go anywhere. So all we can do is harp on the use cases, the value, and showcasing and letting other people that used it and saw value in it talk. And what that will generate is, we're hoping, again, it's a long-term play. It's it's the infinite game, right? It's not something that you're going to make the win today or tomorrow. It's how do we win the next generation that are coming up, right? And it's here's all the technology, here's how all the use cases and the value that we saw, and they can start kind of making that voice from within these specific projects and saying, to the larger superintendent or project manager that's been doing it for 30 years. That's when you get those people, the newer kind of assistant project managers or project engineers or whatever you want to call it, that goes into the project and say, I really want to use this. Can I just try it on our project? And you get to that pushback, as you said, is because we are, as an industry, very programmed to avoid failure at all costs. Yeah. And we all can understand why, right? We have 0 to very thin margins of, success and profits. So we don't want to forfeit that, right? We don't want to try something and then it fails. And that's when you get to the controlled environment, right? So even when we try something, especially when we try something new for the first time, pilot, is we would do it in concurrent with the way that we're doing the old way, right? And we keep that kind of in parallel, and we see how they compare. And when the new one fails, there's still the old way that's carrying some of that workload. And that's the only way to kind of mitigate some of that risk, especially for the older superintendents and project managers that are really kind of hesitant of jumping and just trying something new. You know what I mean?
Yep. And I think it feels like we are getting to the point that, we're starting to see a transition of people that entered the workforce 3 or 4 years ago, and they're starting to get into project manager roles, and they're starting to get into manager and director, and we're starting to see that growth. I got into laser scanning about 10 or 12 years ago. Back then, it was you didn't really see it being done. People weren't asking for it. It was now it's like you said with the BIM mandate. Now there's projects that it is a requirement to start with doing control and scanning, and then converting to an as-built BIM, and then starting into the design It is becoming, some of these technologies are becoming, mandated, needed, and we're starting to see that transformation of the younger generations that are starting to enter our workforce are coming from, they've been gaming, and they've been, they're looking at the metaverse stuff, and they want to see virtual reality on their job sites. And I feel like we almost have the balance too of like some people we need to almost slow down instead of encourage, some that don't want the change.
That mandating aspect is a really, really important. I'm sorry to interrupt you on that.
No, you're good.
But it's a very important point because, and that's what we're seeing over and over again, right? If the superintendent or project manager, again, old school, been doing the same thing over and over again, they're not going to just try something new, right? Just to see if it works or not. It's just not going to happen. We've come to the conclusion. It's just, that's the way it is, right? But here's the mandate. If the client comes and says, I want you to use this, they're like, sure.
Yes, of course.
Hamza, can you help us set this up? I don't know how to use it, but we need to do it. And here's why, because now it's shifting the risk, right?
Yep.
So now if it fails, they can say, oh, no, Mr. or Mrs. Client, you're the one that told me to use that.
Yeah.
It didn't work or whatever. It's all that mentality about who do we blame if this doesn't work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not saying like, who do we praise if this does work?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That might just go unnoticed, but who the risk management first.
Yeah.
But it's exciting. It's exciting to be focused on innovation in construction because I get excited saying this. Literally, our industry is building the world. We are responsible for the roads we drive on, the bridges we cross, the houses we live in, the hotels we stay in. Everything is built by construction, and a lot of our processes are still old. There's ways to improve them. So to be focused on innovation and technology within the construction, architecture, engineering, survey, everything geospatial world is awesome. And the technologies that have been coming out and changing over the last 10 years, it's just like you can go in any direction. There's so many things to improve.
There are so many things, but I'll give credit to our industry. We've been doing better lately.
Yes.
Right? In the past 5 years, we've been really adopting things and changing some processes and older workflows. So I'm really excited to see that. And the startup ecosystem, man, it's just blowing up. Like there's a new startup that I hear about on a daily basis. I kid you not.
Yep. No, it's exciting times. So do you have any examples you'd want to share of a technology or a process that you guys have kind of seen that you have adopted or you have proven out? Any that I'd be specifically interested in talking about. With Reality Capture Network, we love talking about laser scanning and mapping and drones and 360 cameras and the idea of kind of digital tools for the job site and that transformation. What are some of the tools that you guys have gone through and you're testing or you've proven or would love to hear a little bit?
I can go on for days, man.
I know. Pick a couple that come to mind.
Right. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind really is like when we started the drone program in 2017 and said, this is something that's really kind of changing the game. And we've said that over and over again. But again, you go, superintendent is like, how much is this going to cost me? I need to dedicate a resource to do this because it really isn't that simple. It's not just, put a drone there and it would do the work. But we've proven, and we have a case study that we haven't really published, but there's one project that we've just constantly mapped the earthwork on a weekly basis for like 2 years. Just to try it out, right? And we were kind of like working with the project team and giving them the constant reporting about how much earth was moved and all that stuff, right? But really, the end game for us is just like, let's try it out. Let's keep doing it. Let's see what information we can get from it. Until we got hit by a change order from the earth moving subcontractor saying, hey, I actually did more than in my scope of work. And we're like, wait a minute, I have data. So we pulled out the data and we proved to the subcontractor that yes, they have done more work than in their scope of work.
We know exactly how much.
We know exactly how much, and it's 10% of what they were asking for.
Yeah. And I love that example because that's one of those examples where proactively using the technology before you know what the ROI is, which is one of the huge issues with certain people that want to adopt the technology is, oh, wait a minute, the cost on this is upfront. how much is it going to save us? And sometimes you don't know until you need the data.
Right. And that's the funny thing is like just that change order. I'm not going to mention exact numbers because it might scare some people.
Yep.
Just that specific change order paid for the drone, for the dedicated person, their flight to and from California to Jacksonville to training and getting them all, up to speed, and everything in between. The processing, the platform, the data collection, all of it. It just paid for it.
One project.
One project.
Yeah. Yep.
It's amazing. The funniest thing after that is, so we're talking about this use case or case study internally within our project managers, and one of them jumps up and is like, well, actually, I do have a change order from a subcontractor. Can you give me that data? I'm like,
yeah.
No, you have to fly the drone every week. First. It's not retroactive.
Yep. And those are so did this start to spark some client or some internal projects now are like, okay, we want to start doing this?
Absolutely. Yeah. Now we get way more projects that are just like have their dedicated drone on the job site, and they're doing their weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, because there's a lot going on over there. They don't get to it every week. And that's fine. I even say like monthly flights, just give me monthly flights. And that would show something, that would show progress, that would show, quantities.
Yep.
And stuff like that. Same thing with 360s. We had use cases where we're just documenting to document, right? We're not really kind of consistently using it and looking at the quantity takeoff and how much progress and all of that stuff. Even though we're trying to do that, we're trying to show that value. But it really, really kind of pays off when somebody says, is like, hey, wait a minute, we're getting sued about a specific thing. Can we find what happened in that specific location at that specific time? And we're like,
yes, we can.
That's why we're doing it.
The time stamping of doing these processes, whether drone, camera, scanning, some companies have just found that, look, the potential savings of one lawsuit pays for implementing all of them on every project.
Absolutely. I would believe it. But I mean, that's the kind of the battle that we're trying to kind of play around with, right? Which is like, how much push do you want to do at the front end of it and showcase the value that it brings? Because again, I keep mentioning that over and over again, because it really can't be understated. It's a lot of work. It's not just something that you just send to the field and it will just do it. It's like, no, there's somebody has to actually do the work and dedicate at least an hour a week to either do the 360s or the drone scans and all that stuff. And you have to show them that time is valuable, that you're getting some reporting out of it. And that's what we're doing, like consistently. We're showing them, you get a weekly report about here's where your project is doing, some pictures and stuff. And sometimes when they send those to the client is like, yes, I want more. Give me more of that.
We'll pay for it. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, good. We don't have to worry about our budget anymore. They want it. Okay. Win-win.
Absolutely.
I love, it sounds like the approach that you guys take internally is the same conclusion that I've come to for our whole industry, which is why I'm focusing so much with the podcast and the conference and this education center we're building on our website, is that the best way to improve the adoption and the innovation is to inspire people to change and show them case studies, show comparison, between different technologies on what the results are, so they can make informed decisions on here's what I want. And it helps avoid picking the wrong technology. If we have an education center to go to where we can compare all the different hardware and the results and the accuracies, then when somebody wants to use a tool, they know which one falls within the right category. Historically, we have not had a lot of good resources to go find this. We've had to do it all ourselves and okay, let's get a trial of this. Okay, well, it works for that. Let's get a trial of this. Let's rent a scan. Let's rent this scanner. Let's have someone come use this one. And we were like trying to figure it out. I feel like there's enough people in the industry that have done this for 10 years now. There's enough data. My goal is like, okay, I want to connect with people that are like-minded and see this. Let's start putting some of this information together and educating each other and creating a community that's willing to share some of the pros and cons in order to help everybody be a little more successful in understanding these tools and the adoption without, taking confidential information that you develop yourself or...
That was going to be my point, is like the cons aspect of it. And it sometimes a con to somebody is really a pro for someone else, depending on your use case, right? So that's something that it's a continuous, I don't want to call it battle, let's call it debate between high accuracy, more time, or low accuracy, low time, right? It's like, do I want to finish the scan within half an hour and get within an inch? Or do I want to spend 4 hours and get within 16th of an inch, right? It's like, it depends on your use case and what you're trying to solve for and what you're trying to do. So those things also need to kind of be connected to each other, because not everything is either like black or white, right? It's like this works and this doesn't. It's really, what's the use case? What's the problem statement?
Absolutely. And that's the part that, as we're seeing the rise of the technologies and the desire to adopt and implement these, is the lack of knowledge around all of that.
Yes.
Right now, there are construction companies, engineers, architects, surveyors that are just now getting into laser scanning or getting into drones. Well, they don't know the differences between, why would I use a Matterport or a Geoslam or a Navis or a Leica or a Faro or, they're all scanners, right? Well, no. There's certain processes you have to follow. There's certain ones you can put above ceiling to get MEP. There's certain ones that are accurate enough for floor plans or floor flatness or exterior or interior. There's such a complexity that a lot of people, they look at the marketing material of, this is our scanner and this is the accuracy statement. Well, that's not true. You can't just take that scanner, go out to any job, and that's all you do. You press the button and you're done.
Exactly.
There is processes. There is information that needs to be understood. And that's one of the goals and why I'm taking the approach of, I'm willing to share all the secrets that I've created or learned or found or over the last 10 years is every single month, at least once a month, if not every week, I get companies reaching out that just got a scanner, just went out and did this project. I don't know why my building is tilted. I see like 3 walls and I'm like, okay, that's because it's not as easy as just press the button. You got to learn best practices and workflows. And do you need control? Do you not? What's the accuracy? So I get excited about the fact that I'm starting to see more people that are willing to do the same and share some of their case studies. So many companies, like you've talked about even, have done their internal case studies and their internal testing to come to certain conclusions. Well, there's 100 other companies that are like trying to learn that right now. And my thought is that, yes, we might give away certain best practices we've created or we've come up with, but what it'll do is help more projects successfully implement the tools, which helps the client see that, which helps the entire desire for the technologies in the first place continue to grow.
Absolutely. And that's something that we've, to your point, like we've trial and error, right? Early on is like, let's buy a Faro, let's buy a Leica, let's, rent a Trimble, let's see how they compare and all of that stuff. And we get to a point where we have a dedicated VDC team that does that scanning, and they are awesome. Shout out to your VDC guys. They've done a phenomenal job into capturing accurate scans, registering them in record time, and delivering them to the design team. But then you get to a different kind of paradigm, or kind of like a bottleneck, right? It's like, even if you did the best job possible, you get the most accurate, the highest density of point cloud, and you give it to the designer, their computer might not really process it as well as your beast that you're doing a lot of VDC stuff on it. And we're coming to that conclusion now. Is like, all right, maybe some projects we don't need that level of detail, right? Maybe let's just take a BLK to go and just go quickly, or I have a hover map here, like from Emerson, just a very quick scan, and all they need to see is like, where's everything connected and how's everything looking. They don't really care about the 1/4 of an inch accuracy because yes, they are designing on top of it, but there's still some leeway and kind of like play around those numbers, and then they can get to a higher level of details later on. during the design phase.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I'm not sure how you guys handle it. I'd be kind of curious to hear, but when you guys implement a technology on a site, one of the difficulties I've seen on some jobs is the first person requesting the scan wants it for a certain use case, so they're okay with the lower accuracy. And then later, the person with the data is like, okay, we're going to fabricate steel for measuring this. Like, wait, no, you initially did it for marketing material. It's not, it wasn't done with the right workflow and data for that use case. You know, I think that's one difficult thing is how do you track and manage, you know, whoever touches the data to understand what was it captured for and how accurate can we expect it to be? I've seen that as a difficulty.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what we're using for that is kind of like naming convention, right? It's like you name it like the project number, project name, and then, you know, what's the level of accuracy or what was the date that it was taken. And, you know, we have dedicated, again, resources that you can reach out to and ask them some questions. I understand that sometimes like somebody just runs with a set of data and doesn't really check with anybody else. But yeah, that's a risk that has to be accounted for. Absolutely.
That's awesome. So what are some of the technologies that you're in the middle of kind of testing and developing or working through at the moment?
There is a lot, but like let me kind of reel it back into the reality capture aspect, right? So we do like what we call the uptake videos, which is kind of just us reviewing a technology. So we did one for the MSN hover map, and then we did one for the Navis VLX of the same location, same, you know, one floor of a hospital. We have the same scans from a Trimble scanner as well. What we're going to do is layer all of those and see, you know, based on cost to acquire a unit, based on time to complete a scan, based on accuracy of points and noise and all that stuff. So that's kind of in progress right now in flight. Another one is Skydio. We have the S2. We're trying to see how does that 3D autonomous kind of capture works. And we went out and we scanned an old rusty looking crane, which was an interesting use case, right? Because it has a lot of different, you know, the trusses and what it can see between them, and you can see the sky on the other side. But we have a very cool video that we're going to post very soon about
that's awesome.
That use case of, I really love this Skydio. It's pretty awesome. It's like really just one click of a button, and it went up there and it took like over 300 images all around the crane just for me to go back and do like photogrammetry and reconstruct it in 3D. It's pretty amazing stuff.
It really is. Yeah, that's one that I've not pulled the trigger on yet, just with most of our types of projects, but I absolutely want one. It's so different from what most people are doing because of its intelligence of, you know, is it the highest end camera? No. But the intelligence of getting close and the right angles in order to build the meshes and the models, it's incredible.
I'll share that video with you when we post it, and it's going to make you want to go pull the trigger right away.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, I will say, anytime you guys do comparisons, studies like that, anything you're willing to share external, I would love to talk with you about. Our goal with our education center is starting to share some of this, whether through webinars that we review case studies with our audience or we upload them into our education center. This year, we're going to start putting a push to gathering this type of education content from the community. So we have it in one spot that as we push clients, it's like, oh, well, look, there's 4 others that compared with Survey, and there's Farah, and, you know, there's all Leica and Trimble and Navis, and, you know, it's hard for us to do it with all of the gear. So my goal is that by developing the content from the community, we will end up with content about every single option.
Yes. I'm super excited about that, and count us in. I'm ready to move and share all the videos that we have with you as well.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. Okay, when we talk about a couple of the other technologies, I'm curious to hear, have you guys pushed into much on the AR, VR side yet?
Absolutely. We have, so the VR side, we've actually developed our own platform that does safety training. Awesome. I know there's a couple out there that are trying to do the same thing. The way that we kind of tackle this is from a different perspective, which is let's not focus on the training aspect, but more about the hazard recognition aspect. It's like, so it's a VR game that you put on and you're transported into a virtual job site, and all we're asking the users to do is like, do you see a hazard or do you not see a hazard, right? It's like just walk around and identify hazards and put them in the right bucket, right? So what type of hazard? But we're not asking them what is it and how do you fix it and who to talk to or whatever. And we're getting a lot of good data from that feeds back into our kind of technical training that says, here's a lot of people are missing this specific hazard. Can we kind of maybe focus more on developing training tools for that? So that's for the VR side. Mostly, we tried the design review aspects, and to very, very little kind of wins over there. But that's
question on the training piece. Then, is that something that you guys have kind of rolled out and do in certain locations, or is it just more in the testing of it, or what's the implementation of that look like?
We started this in 2018. We're in the third iteration of it, and then right now it's again available for all our projects. We're trying to run it through our safety team. So they're the ones that are kind of like dedicating resources and running with the headsets to the different job sites. Ultimately, what we're trying to do with it is have a headset kind of like dedicated to every job site. Just like
at
when we send a drone, you just send a Meta Quest 2. It's $299. It's really not that big of an expense. But again, it's like, I guess the hesitation behind that is like, what if they're sitting there playing games?
Yeah.
So what? I mean, if it's a break, I don't care.
Yeah.
But that's the role that we're doing right now. We're collecting so much data from that, and we actually just partnered with MindForge to bring this to the industry overall. So
awesome.
That will be rolling out here very shortly. I mean, it's right now it's at the last phases because Meta have a very robust review program. So we're waiting to hear about that, app within the Meta Quest.
Okay. When you do have a site that wants to implement it and you set up a VR headset there, is it for your internal employees to use? Are you looking at the process of using it for like site safety training when contractors or visitors come, or who ends up doing the training?
Everybody really on the job site. But again, we're not doing it as the first set of training.
Yep.
You're doing your safety orientation first. You're talking to somebody or you're watching a video. And then once you're done with that, it's like a 10-minute session really for each person. So they just go in and try to identify hazards. And we're not trying to say is like, if you didn't get, 80% success in the game, then you can't go to no, it's just like really for our own back-end data and kind of seeing where we need to focus on training-wise. Yeah,
absolutely. That's awesome. This is an area that I think we're seeing more adoption in certain industries. I've always, when I got started in scanning, I was out in oil and gas facilities, and every time we would go to a different facility, we've gone to 15, 20 different facilities. They all have the same safety training videos that have some generic, picture of a pumping and a picture of a hazard sign. And I'm like, okay, seeing all these tools, at some point, the safety training is not going to be this video from 50 years ago. It's going to be a video or a simulation or VR of your actual facility. I think at some point in the future, everybody is going to do safety training that way, where it's the actual job site. I'm even thinking about your guys' sites, and in the future, if it's to the point that it's fast enough to fly it with a drone, produce to photogrammetry, push that into the gaming environment. Now that VR simulation of the training is the actual site they're about to walk out of the trailer and step on. And it's like, okay, I know where the emergency exit is. I know where the fire extinguisher is on the actual job site I'm at, not a, pretend environment.
No, that's a great vision. And we're definitely looking at that and how do we scale it? And it sounds much easier than it is.
Yes. Yeah. But I think there's certain players that are in the next few years, we'll see certain processes like that become pretty simple to do. And even more so when it's in a visual context like that, as opposed to a super accurate model for engineering that needs all the proper elements. When you look at visualization pieces, I think there's a lot of things moving in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. But another, maybe an intermediary kind of phase between the old boring snooze videos for safety and like the full immersive of your own job site, what if there is a more exciting video, right? It's like either fun or funny or something that makes it more memorable. So we're also looking at that angle of it, which is interesting.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, anything you can do, especially when it is around safety, to try to get people's attention so they pay attention, even if it's funny, but they get the real knowledge out of it as well. You know, in today's age, sometimes it's hard to keep people's attention.
It is very much so, yeah.
Right? I think they said the
30-second attention span, right?
I was going to say there's some saying out there about, you know, that a goldfish has more of attention span than we do. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get your take on where you see augmented reality. Either in some already testing, or is it something you see that you think in the next couple years would be implemented? Where's your thought around the AR piece?
We looked at AR early on. Visual Live was one of the movers of that space, and it worked well. But of course, there is always limitations. It's not easy to use. It's not like you can put any user in it. Like a superintendent might be like, "What is this? I don't see anything." Right. So we're trying to look at different use cases of that. We're working with Argyle AR. We're working with others that make it much simpler user interface that makes it easier to, because the biggest bottleneck for that is alignment.
Yeah.
So, and that's how Visual Life solved it, is with the QR code, right? You put the QR code in the real world and you put it in the model, and now when you scan it, boom, you're there. You're in the right place, right? But QR codes don't stay in the same place throughout the project. And I've learned that very quickly, like literally like the same day that paper was taken down. And I was like, oh, now I need to go print another one. Or it doesn't stick to some cases. Like we were having like a renovation on an old factory of some sort. And so everything is like grimy and sticky, and it's like, there's nothing that's going to stick to that. So there's some limitations to that. We looked at, so we shifted kind of like the focus. Instead of focus on augmenting everything, is like, what about underground utility? That's a bigger use case for us, because underground utility strikes is a hazard that's happening on a daily basis for all, right? And it's not just a Haskell problem. And we looked at VGIS and others that can help us visualize that while we're digging, right? Instead of, just having somebody just come mark some areas where there might be utilities, is like, no, have the model be in there and just kind of like put the headset and guide the person that's actually operating the excavator. Yeah,
no, I think those are all great use cases. I think those are, drones, laser scanning becoming a little more widely adopted, VR use cases, AR use cases, and the technology and the simplicity are still the ones I feel like are most people have not really implemented in solid processes yet. But again, I think all these tools are exciting, and the integration over the next few years. You look at how far we've come in the last 5 years and the last 10 years, and the speed of growth in the interest of the technologies and the investment going into developing the technologies. I think the curve is quite steep.
yeah, absolutely. And we're also kind of, that's something that maybe I didn't mention, is like we work as the corporate venture arm for Haskell. So we make,
I was going to bring that up.
Space. And one of the investments that we made is in Hyperframe. I don't know if you've heard of them or not.
I haven't yet.
They're off the West Coast, and what they're trying to disrupt is the metal wall framing industry. So they created their own proprietary metal wall framing that doesn't require any tools. You snap in place. They're all being cut based on the model. So the first step is you would upload the model. They would, figure out where the studs would go and where the tracks, and kind of prefabricate all of that, ship it to the job site. And each one of those would have a QR code on it that you can put in your HoloLens, scan it, and it would show you exactly where that piece goes. And you're just kind of like assembling like a Lego block kind of thing, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. That's awesome. How how has it been, with the idea of listening to startups and wanting to invest in them, and like you guys are doing your own kind of review and trying to pick companies to partner with, and how's that process been? You guys have done it for a couple years now, or?
We've been doing it since 2018 is when we started. So we're getting up to 5 years now. And you said it right. You get reach outs from all these different startups on a daily basis. Some of them we either know from people that we interact with, that they've tried them or pilot them, or they give us the reference. Some of them are brand new. We've never even heard of this company. So let's sit down and talk to them and see what their solution solves for, right? And to me, that's the number one, is like, what's the problem statement? And our investment criteria is that it's something that has to do with either like the way that we build things or design things and how it helps us, and then we can kind of like help the industry. And after all, or if it's like a local startup that is kind of like, we're just trying to help the local ecosystem of startups and entrepreneurs. So those are the two main criteria that we look at. And then once we kind of talk to them and see, the vision and paint the picture and the numbers and all that stuff, second step is to get it in front of end users, right? And say, hey, can you validate that this use case is important, this problem statement is important for us, and either get it on a job site or just get that quick feedback, gut feel, because a lot of these kind of raises happen in a very fast pace. So they want an answer like yesterday. I'm like, all right, well, give me a second.
Tell us really quick if this is validated. Okay.
Right. No, I have to go talk to people, and how hard it is to get a hold of anybody on the job site.
Yeah, everyone's working, busy. No, that's awesome. So what does that process look for? You guys have certain time frames you like open for requests, or is this like a constant, process?
It's a constant thing. Yeah, it's always, we're always looking at, term sheets and other companies that are trying to raise. We're corporate, so we usually do kind of like a strategic investor. We're not really leading around or becoming like a larger shareholder. We're really just kind of taking a small bite of that piece. And that just gets us more skin in the game and help us become part of the development kind of guideline for that startup, and helping them push it towards a vision that we think is going to help us, but again, ultimately help the entire industry.
That's awesome. I was excited to kind of hear that you guys were doing that. This year for our conference, we're actually planning, we haven't told anybody or posted this yet, but we are going to open a startup pitch prior to the conference, just virtually, let people submit applications of, their startup, and we'll have certain criteria for it. And then we're going to pick 1 to 3 of them to offer free vendor spots to, bring them out and give them a chance to, share their startup idea on stage to the audience and record it and try to help create some content around it. And we have not yet solidified the idea of, okay, do we want to bring out some companies that have investment arms like this that could actually hear the pitches in case somebody's interested in working with them? We'll create our own Shark Tank.
No, that's fantastic. I would love to be involved in that.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I think there's so many people out there with ideas, and there's so many people that are hesitant to talk about them, hesitant to pursue them. They're afraid of failing. They don't know how to get started. And a lot of my goal with all the people I've watched and followed and listened to is like, okay, I really want to start mixing, and maybe this is kind of where we start going toward our wrap up here, is talking a little bit about just the idea of inspiring others and sharing others, and who do you learn from? Like, are you big into reading books? Do you follow other people on, social media? Are there YouTube channels you follow? That's something that I feel like a while back I was hesitant to share, like who all I followed and who all I'm learning from. And I even had a second podcast because I didn't want to dilute RCN, which was focused on technical. At first, I didn't want to dilute it with like a conversation just around mindset or entrepreneurship. But then down the road, I was like, you know what? The more that I talk about construction technologies and innovation, the more I'm finding people in our industry who are trying to start a business. And this discussion around mindset and inspiration and really should be part of our conversation in technology and inspiring the industry. So what are some of the things you do, to inspire you or to learn?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an avid listener / reader of Simon Sinek.
Yep.
Start with Why, the Infinite Game, Leaders Eat Last. So those are really interesting and inspiring books about very specific business cases. One of the best books that was recommended to me, I think it was on a LinkedIn post. I forgot who exactly recommended it, but it was The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle.
Okay.
That book just opened my mind in so many different directions. It's just there's so many stories in there about the culture within a corporate environment and also within like a startup, and how do you cultivate that? How do you make it more appetite for growth, for better everything. So those are the main things. I talk constantly to people in the industry like Hugh Seaton, Nate Fuller, Rose Hall from XXL, and there's tons of people that are inspiring in their own right, and what they're doing for the industry, but also they have those recommendations of what books they read, what podcasts they listened to, and all that stuff. The Construction Brothers podcast is one of my favorites. Of course, Contact Crew, can't forget them.
Yep.
The list goes on, really.
Yep. No, that's awesome. I love asking people that and hearing like who are some of the inspirations to you, or okay, I would love to know if you have a couple more examples outside of our industry. So Simon Sinek is a big one. I love his material. Are there some others that come to mind?
Gary Vaynerchuk, I follow him a lot. He's a little bit on unorthodox side. Because his approach is a little different, but I find a lot of value in that. And you mentioned the Shark Tank, right? I follow all of those guys. Kevin O'Leary, you name them.
Yep. No, that's awesome. I found it interesting, back when I first started my business almost 7 years ago, was when I first started like learning about these people. I started following Gary Vee. I found Grant Cardone. I started watching Shark Tank, and you find these people that are major influencers on social media and YouTube, and a lot of people in our industry don't follow any of them.
Right.
And I started...
It's a different industry.
It really is. And what I started to realize, I even asked it at my conference this last year, I asked for a raise of hands of how many people knew Gary Vee. My assumption would be 50% or more because he's everywhere. There was like 10 people.
Nice.
And what I started to realize as I followed all these people and I started learning, and it inspired me to start a podcast and start an online community and put on my own conference. Like, these are the people, following those people, hearing the content they share is what has helped me make the decisions I've made. And then what I realize is there's this 80% of our community doesn't follow any of them. We are the inspiration to people who aren't out there following others. And our industry has a lack of people like that. There is no globally known construction innovation technology influence. It's pretty limited. And my next goal is like, okay, I need to show this to people. I need to show the power of creating and educating and sharing the same way that you're saying you guys do with technology internally to get people to want to adopt it. Yeah. We can do as a community for the entire industry.
Absolutely. No, that's pretty cool, and that's awesome. Grant does rub me off the wrong way, but
yes.
I like the 10x rule is cool, but
yeah,
he's a little aggressive.
He is, and that's what I try to tell everybody when I mention some of the names of like who I've learned from. I'm like, look, you have to take everybody and everything you listen to and everything you follow with a grain of salt. Right. Are there things you like and dislike about some of those people? Absolutely. Can you take some of the things they share and the techniques that they've used to build something massive and successful that people love, that people follow, that can you take the good from others that have been successful and figure out how they built what they built and utilize those in a way to help yourself, your company, your industry. And that's where I'm like, I think there's so much that can be done for our industry using some of the same tools and leaving some of the things you don't like, behind.
Absolutely. I mean, I think so. Yes, I totally agree with you that our industry, like the actual people that are doing, the construction aspect or the design, are not following that as much. But I think the entrepreneurs on the opposite side, right? So the ones that are building these tech companies that are trying to influence the industry are very familiar with them, and they kind of follow that. So there's going to be that merge at some point, hopefully, and then kind of we get that nice wave to ride.
Yep. Well, I'm excited. I do want to thank you for your time with me today, sharing kind of the story and the journey you've had, where your guys' company is at. I'm sure it will not be our last conversation. I think we will see more of you. Hopefully, we'll do something collaborative here at our conference this year. So any last words that you want to share as we're wrapping up?
Fail fast, fail often, fail spectacularly.
Fail spectacularly.
That's something that you mentioned, is like a lot of people are afraid of failure, but don't be, right? You learn from it and you become better anyway. So don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah, I love that saying of like, failure, it's only failure if you quit.
Yes.
If you're failing to learn and make a change and re-implement, then it's innovation.
Absolutely.
As long as we're not making the same failure over and over and over, that's a problem. But if we can fail and document it and learn and transform, then it's worth failing.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, well, thank you again for your time. Looking forward to sharing you with our audience and looking forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate you hosting me.